And it was Ibn al-Haytham who conducted the most thorough investigation into its properties of camera obscura, and explained how the image was formed. It was the legacy of Ibn Haytham when he was in home arrest. So
Really?
let me talk about a little bit about his house arrest.
Hey, welcome to a very special episode of the Afikra podcast. My name is Mikey Muhanna. Today's episode is in partnership with Fujifilm and Gulf Photo Plus, and we're talking about camera obscura. With me is Dr. Nadia Maftouni, who is a professor at the University of Tehran and is in the Department of Philosophy and Islamic Theology, and is a senior research scholar at Yale Law School. Nadia, welcome to the series.
Hi, Mikey, and every audience. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
If I may, I will introduce the main figure in camera obscura for you.
Yeah, we'll get to it. So maybe before, let me just ask you a really basic question. Mm-hmm. Who invented the camera obscura?
Many figures have speak about camera obscura before Ibn Haytham. Like Aristotle, and before Aristotle, Motsu from China, and even in Arab world, Al-Kendi philosopher and scientist, yes. But Ibn Haytham has a very special inventories related to camera obscura. If you want, I will explore the specialties of Ibn Haytham related to camera obscura.
Yeah. I mean, maybe can you explain what is this camera obscura?
The camera obscura had been known to scholars before Ibn Haytham, such as ancient Greek philosophers, Aristotle, and Chinese polymath Motsu, even Al-Kendi, Arab philosopher, mathematician, and physician, as I mentioned before. They performed experiments with light and the pinhole in 9th century and proved again behavior of light. All of them experimented with a small hole and light, but none of them suggested that screen is used so an image from one side of a hole in the surface could be projected at the screen on the other. And it was Ibn Haytham who conducted the most thorough investigation into its properties of camera obscura, and explained how the image was formed. He realized that the image formed was a result of the behavior of light rays, and he was the first to document the process scientifically, emphasizing the role of light in vision. His experiments were among the first to show that the image was a result of the straight line travel of light rays, contradicting the earlier belief that vision was simply the result of an emission of rays from the eyes. It's odd, but before Ibn Haytham, they were thinking that the vision is the result of an emission of rays from the eyes.
So even like Aristotle and these types of people, they, before Ibn Haytham, and this is like in 1000 1000 AD, before that point, before Ibn Haytham, everything was thought of like rays are going out of your eye and sort of seeing the world that way.
This is based on their methodology.
Okay.
Their methodology was the main fault of them. So I need to explain a little bit about Ibn Haytham's methodology.
Yeah.
he dramatically developed empirical method based on observation and experimentation, resulted in the promotion of science, also technology. Although he is best remembered for his pioneering works in optics, he is considered the most significant figure in the history of optics between antiquity and the 17th century. Ibn al-Haytham was also deeply involved in mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy also, especially philosophy of science. For example, he laid many of the foundations for integral calculus, which is used for calculating areas and volumes. The most important of his books, the book of optics, Kitab al-Manazir, on the spherical burning mirror, on the light of the moon, on doubts concerning Ptolemy. In doubts concerning Ptolemy, or Shukuk ala Bathlemius, he raised questions criticizing the elements of Ptolemaic models and the method of Bathlemius. You know, he is first one to base his method on sense perception and conducting and criticizing the results. And this is a way for Europe scientists to come. Like Kepler, like Bacon. When you think of trailblazers in science, often come to mind names like Newton, Einstein, Galileo, but long before them, in the 11th century, this was Ibn al-Haytham, this brilliant scholar from Basra, whose work laid the foundation for modern science. And if I have time, I will explore his influence on Kepler.
So basically, I want to talk a little bit of this the book of optics. Basically, was that a series of experiments that he was just working on exclusively and then were published as a single book, or they were published independently and then sort of collected as a review of everything he'd been working on throughout his life?
It was the legacy of Ibn Haytham when he was in home arrest. So
really?
Let me talk about a little bit about his house arrest. He spent about 10 years under house arrest, possibly due to his work advising the Caliph on matters of Nile's water control and engineering. There are various theories and historical accounts regarding the reasons behind it. For example, the most widely accepted reason for Ibn al-Haytham's house arrest stems from his involvement with a large and ambitious project commissioned by Caliph al-Hakim bi Amrillah in Cairo, al-Hakim of the Fatimid Caliphate. The Caliph had ordered the construction of a vast project to regulate the flow of the Nile River and prevent flooding in Cairo. This was an extremely complex and high-stakes undertaking, and the Caliph sought the advice of experts, including Ibn al-Haytham. Ibn al-Haytham, renowned for his knowledge in engineering and hydraulics, was appointed to lead the project. However, it's said that after thoroughly investigating the plan, he concluded that the project was far too ambitious and would likely fail. He is believed to have warned the Caliph about the potential difficulties and dangers, but the project was pushed forward anyway. It is said that Ibn Haytham, perhaps feeling a moral obligation to avoid the disastrous consequences of the project, pretended to be mad or mentally unstable as a way of avoiding blame for any failure. This tactic worked to some degree, as he was not executed, but he was nevertheless placed under house arrest in the Caliph's palace, where he would remain for several years, and about 10 years. And it was a chance to write his books. And his books, most important of them is the book of optics, Kitab al-Manazir, is the legacy of this time, this period of house arrest.
Okay. Was he, I mean, let me just try to understand him as a person. So when he was put under house arrest, did he think of himself as a scientist?
Yes, people said that he pretended to be mad, so if someone is mad, they will not punish him. And but his books in this period shows that he is a empirical scientist, not merely theoretical. And his books in this period is a collection of his experiments, and also he were copying some texts to earn money. And he is a very modest scientist and had a very, very meager earnings with copying the books and treatises of other people.
Yeah. You know, because the reason why I'm asking about whether he thought of himself as a scientist was because this idea that even what we think of as the scientific method today was kind of an innovation, this idea of empirical science and not only theoretical science, and developing the scientific method of hypothesis and tests and recreating tests. Was that something that he thought was an innovation or no?
I got it. Let me read one of his statements.
Please.
Ibn al-Haytham says, "Whosoever seeks the truth will not proceed by studying the writings of his predecessors, and by simply accepting his own good opinion of them. Whosoever studies the works of science must, if he wants to find the truth, transform himself into a critic of everything he reads. He must examine tests and explanations with the greatest precision and question them from all angles and aspects." What made he truly revolutionary wasn't just his discoveries, but how he approached science. He is often credited with laying the groundwork for what we now call the scientific method. Ibn Haytham's emphasis on the importance of experimentation and critical observation and his rigorous approach was revolutionary. Much of the medieval scholarship was dominated by Aristotle in Aristotelian reasoning and Ptolemaic theories, which emphasized logic and speculation over direct observation. Ibn Haytham championed a systematic approach to experimentation, advocating for the collection of empirical data and critical observation. And there are more notions like the role of sense perception. Ibn Haytham had a strong interest in understanding how we perceive the world, a topic that bridged both philosophy and natural science. In his work, he argued that human vision is not the result of rays emitted by the eye, as was commonly believed, but rather the result of light entering the eye and being processed by it. This was a radical departure from earlier Greek theories, such as those of Ptolemy and Euclid.
I mean, I want to talk a little bit about the camera obscura for a second,
Uh-huh.
and how his experiments sort of reveal this idea that light and color, how light and color are connected, how they mingle, all that stuff. Can you explain a little bit about that?
At its core, camera obscura is a simple device that demonstrates the basic principles of how light behaves. The device consists of a dark room or box with a small hole or lens on one side. When light from the outside world enters through the hole or pinhole, it projects an inverted image of the scene outside onto a surface inside the room. This phenomenon happens because light travels in straight lines. When light passes through the small hole, the image of the outside world is flipped as it projects onto the opposite wall. In simple terms, it's a natural pinhole camera, and it's the basis of how modern photography works today.
So, before you keep on going, Nadia, I just want to get this right. I want to get the years right. So,
Yeah.
he writes Kitab al-Manazir, Book of Optics. He writes it in the 11th century, early 11th century. And then I believe it gets translated into Latin about 100 years later. Is that right?
Uh, that's what we see in history books.
Yeah.
And that is his books were translated by Francesco Morolico. Francesco Morolico. And this made Ibn Haytham's work accessible to European scholars, including Kepler. The translation movement during the Renaissance played a crucial role in transmitting knowledge from the Islamic world to Europe, and this was acknowledged by them. And that translation movement laid the intellectual foundation for the scientific revolution. And the European scholars don't deny or don't reject this fact.
Yeah. Okay, so it was translated, and then let's talk about some of the people who it influenced. So there's, you were mentioning Kepler, but there's Roger Bacon, many other people. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit about some of the people who it inspired and how it led to further developments.
First, I spoke about the historical connection. Though Ibn al-Haytham lived in the 10th and 11th centuries and Kepler in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, the intellectual connection between them is obvious. Kepler, who is best known for his laws of planetary motion, was deeply influenced by earlier scientists, including Ibn al-Haytham, especially in the fields of optics, vision, and astronomy. The most significant point of influence was Ibn al-Haytham's approach to optics, which laid the groundwork for Kepler's work in both the science of light and the understanding of how the eye works. Kepler in turn built on Ibn al-Haytham's work and refined many of his concepts, particularly those related to the nature of vision and the mechanics of lenses and telescopes. One of the most direct influences Ibn al-Haytham had on Kepler was in their shared exploration of the anatomy of the eye and how vision works. It is a little bit long. I can explore for you theories
please.
of vision, there was three or four, based on how would you explain, 3 or 4 theories of vision. Ibn al-Haytham removed them all and put forward his own theory of vision, which Kepler followed. Ibn al-Haytham studied how light refracts when passing through different lenses, paving the way for Kepler's own work on telescopes. Kepler's use of concave lenses to correct vision was directly inspired by Ibn al-Haytham's investigation into how curved lenses manipulate light. You know, I'm not Arab, I'm Persian, I'm from Iran, and my nationality is not related with this work. It's not important that I'm Persian and Ibn al-Haytham is Arab. When one has a influence on science or on truth on our life.
Yeah, but these, I mean, for us, we have these borders, but like obviously, science doesn't see the borders, art doesn't see the borders, and so I'm curious if Kepler and Bacon and Da Vinci and all these people, if they saw those borders, did they think, oh, this is an Arab, this is a Arab scientist, there's nothing to see here? Or did they think, no, this is a colleague just from 200 years ago?
In my research, I haven't focused on this problem, but I haven't seen anything indicated such borders. Although in some areas we see in the books of even Kant some views about slaves and which race is better. Yes, they have sort of racist views in their books, but I have not focused on the issue, and I cannot promise you that they haven't any racist view. I have seen some in the history of philosophy.
So I have a question about, let's talk about, I kind of want to ask you, because I'm sure somebody listening has the same question I have, which is, how do you go from Ibn al-Haytham, how do you go from that to my phone camera? Like, what are those principles that he was exploring in Kitab al-Manazir that leads to an actual camera that captures an image on a piece of film or on a glass plate or on something? How does it go from one to another?
Oh, perhaps there is not a near relationship. You know,
Okay.
The inventions of Ibn al-Haytham is far basis for new cameras, but in respect of the that guy was his name, the guru type, the guru who invented a camera. It's a box and a cloth on it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
The guru type, yes. Camera Obscura of Ibn Haytham is very close to the guru type.
Yeah.
Also the guru type. But absolutely, I can't say that this is like our cameras on mobile phone. It needs very expert to the field. I'm not that expert.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's okay. I'm just curious. So maybe we'll continue with how it goes from that his major findings and goes to some of the later Kepler and Da Vinci. What are the main things that they take from his findings in Kitab al-Manazir?
If I may, I think it's a good point to speak a little bit about the epistemology in Ibn al-Haytham, the concept of knowledge, al-ilm. Ibn al-Haytham viewed knowledge as something that must be pursued diligently and systematically. For him, true knowledge came from understanding the natural world through observation, reasoning, and experimentation. His philosophical stance was rooted in the belief that knowledge is not a passive acceptance of established facts, but an active process of investigating, testing, and understanding. This view is particularly evident in his methodical work in optics and vision science, where he emphasized that theories about light and vision should be based on what could be demonstrated through empirical evidence, not merely what was accepted as true by past authorities. And skepticism and the need for doubt is crucial in Ibn al-Haytham's theory of knowledge. Ibn al-Haytham's philosophical approach also exhibited an element of skepticism, in the sense that he believed knowledge should be approached with caution. He argued that doubt was a necessary part of the scientific process, and that it was important to challenge assumptions rather than simply accept them. This aspect of his philosophy was ahead of its time. It aligns with modern notions of scientific skepticism, the idea that scientific inquiry should not be based on blind faith, but on questioning, testing, and refining ideas in light of new evidence. Ibn al-Haytham's philosophy is notable for the way he integrates theoretical reflection with scientific practice. This is an integration between philosophy and science. Since I'm a philosopher, I like this very much. He didn't see philosophy and science as separate domains, but rather as complementary pursuits. His work shows how philosophical thinking can inform scientific practice and how scientific inquiry can illuminate philosophical questions about the nature of reality, perception, and knowledge. So, Ibn al-Haytham's philosophy of knowledge based on critical thinking, empirical observation, and a healthy skepticism, I call it healthy skepticism, toward untested assumptions, laid the groundwork for later developments in both science and philosophy. And some details about his house arrest is here. I'm not sure it's needed.
Yeah. I mean, maybe let's end there, because I'm curious about him as a, like, how did he end his life? Did he end his life in house arrest?
Today, house arrest is a political issue, and it have been many centuries ago. He was not only confined physically, but also effectively removed from public life. However, this period of isolation may have provided him the time and mental space to focus on his studies and intellectual pursuits without the distractions of court politics or the pressures of external expectations. During this time, he wrote his most famous works, including his monumental Kitab al-Manazir, which would go on to shape the field of optics and the development of the scientific method. Interestingly, Ibn al-Haytham was not just confined to his house or under strict surveillance. Some sources suggest that the Caliph may have recognized Ibn al-Haytham's brilliance and even encouraged him to continue his intellectual work while under confinement. In this sense, house arrest may not have been a complete punishment, but rather a form of controlled isolation. That's one explanation. And another explanation, third one, is this is a possible factor in Ibn al-Haytham's house arrest could have been the intrigues and political rivalries that were common in the court of the time. The Fatimid Caliphate under Caliph al-Hakim was known for its erratic and sometimes unpredictable rule. Al-Hakim himself, Al-Hakim bi-Amrillah himself, had a reputation for making decisions that were sometimes driven by whim rather than reason. And he had a tendency to be suspicious of those around him. Ibn al-Haytham's influence in intellectual circles, as well as his involvement in a high-profile project, may have made him a target for suspicion or jealousy among the court's other scholars and advisors. Some accounts suggest that Ibn al-Haytham's disagreement with the execution of the water project may have angered the caliph's inner circle or led to a perception of insubordination. Additionally, Ibn al-Haytham's growing fame as a scholar could have made him a political figure in his own right, which may have contributed to his confinement, especially in an era when political instability and court intrigue were common.
Great. Nadia, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I mean, this is a subject. It's amazing to me how few people know about all of these scholars from the region who had huge influence on our daily life because they influenced so many other scholars. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about them.
I hope you can use my words. I hope this would be useful.
It's very useful. It's very useful.
Thanks so much. If you published it, please send me the link.
Of course. Thank you, Nadia. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining. That episode was in collaboration with Fujifilm and Gulf Photo Plus. We have another episode coming out that is just like this with in conversation with an artist who's put together a camera obscura inspired exhibition at Gulf Photo Plus. We're interviewing them at Co's Arts Fest at El Cercal Avenue, January 25 and 26. We have a bunch of cool stuff for Co's Arts Fest coming up. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much.